Now, so we're reading Joshua, and we were just chatting offline that this next section from chapter 12 on for a few chapters is a little boring. So, but it's also interesting too, because there's a list of the territories that were destroyed or that were beaten or whatever, and then each of the 12 tribes of Israel, it says what they were, where their territory was, right? And this is why I find it. This is why I think it's interesting. If you have to read something interesting into it,
Yeah.
I tell people, I say pretty often when I preach that by the time Jesus is around, which is, I don't know, at least 1,500 years later, maybe even longer, there's only 2 tribes remaining.
Yeah.
And they're separated even. So there's 2 kingdoms left of the 12.
Right.
So the geopolitical problem with having 12 tribes that are independent is they didn't always support each other. So when the Assyrians and the Babylonians come in from the north and other people, gradually those tribes get killed off or absorbed into other cultures until there's nothing left. By the time of Jesus, there's almost nothing left of the 12.
Yeah.
And it's all geographic. So the geography is actually kind of a little interesting to me, because if Israel had been in the north, we might not, I mean, Israel, if Jerusalem, well, Israel too, if Jerusalem had been in the north, we might have had a whole different history of the Jews. If the temple had built in one of the northern kingdoms, but it was built in one of the most southernmost kingdoms, and mostly they got invaded from the north. So I think the Jewish history would be very, very different if they had built their holy city with a temple somewhere in the north.
Okay.
But where Jesus, when Jesus is born in Nazareth in what is at that point the northern part of the Jewish territory, it's actually pretty far south among the 12 tribes. I will show you by using a map, and then we'll read a bunch of names mainly. Okay. So on this, I don't know if this is the best map, but on this map, this is all the 12 tribes. Jerusalem is here.
Okay.
And where Jesus grew up is here. So we have 5 tribes north of where Jesus grew up, 2 across the Jordan. That's 7 of the 12 tribes.
Yeah.
By the time of Jesus, don't exist.
Yeah.
And that also, there are tribes in between the area of Jerusalem and where Jesus was born in Nazareth that are gone too.
Yeah.
And there's only 1 tribe south of Jerusalem, and that's gone also. So there's really only 2 tribes left at the time of Jesus. And the geography, it kind of matters for that reason, because what we're going to read today is all of the town. Well, first all of the leaders of all the kings, and then all the towns in each of the places. It's all geography, and we don't know even today. Think, well, we know where those cities are. We don't actually know where a lot of those cities are.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Well, of course, we know where Jerusalem is. We know where a few others. We know where Jericho is, I think. I said a couple weeks ago that the city of Magdala, which is Mary Magdalene was from, was discovered now about 15-20 years ago, but that's pretty recent, right?
Yeah.
So they're finding some of these ancient, towns and city sites that we have names in the Bible, but we don't know.
Yeah.
We know roughly where they are, but they've been covered over by other cities or destroyed or whatever. So it's interesting just to sort of know. More and more, I've been interested in the geography does help paint the picture of even of Jesus's stuff. One thing I said in a text study I did this week was, it's surprising to me how much where there's two kingdoms, and there's a space in between that's Samaritan led. And in the southern kingdom, is Jerusalem and Bethany and a few other places he goes to. And the northern kingdom is the Sea of Galilee and all that. So I think he does more of his work in the northern area, but he is in the southern area. And if you understand that, then that he's having to pass between those two areas, he's having to pass through Samaritan lands.
Mm-hmm.
The rules from the temple, like the Pharisees are going to be much stricter and have much more power in the southern area than in the northern area.
Right.
So if you know where he is, the geography of where he is, that really affects how you see Jesus' ministry. And then you transpose that onto here, where we're hearing about even more lands and stuff, right? So I think the geography it helps the context.
Right. Helps to understand it.
Right. No matter what the story is, the geography helps the context.
Yeah.
And so when I hear Jesus says, Jesus was, like I said, so much happens on the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah.
Sea of Galilee is up here.
Yeah.
Jerusalem is down here somewhere. Here.
The other thing that we have to remember is that they didn't get from one place to the other quickly like we do.
No. Probably, weeks, or at least a week, to go from the northern area at the time of Jesus to the southern area.
Yeah. And now you do it in what, a couple hours?
If that, yeah.
If that.
Yeah. So, well, let's read some of chapter 12 of Joshua. Now, these are the kings of the land whom we probably won't talk much during, because it's just a bunch of names, either towns' names or people's names. But that's why I spent a little time ahead of time talking about the geography.
Yeah.
Now, these are the kings of the land whom the Israelites defeated, whose land they occupied beyond the Jordan toward the east, from the Wadi Arnon to Mount Hermon, with all the Arabah eastward. King Sihon of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon and ruled from Aror, which is on the edge of the Wadi Arnon, and from the middle of the valley as far as the river Jabbok, the boundary of the Ammonites, that is, half of Gilead, and the Arabah to the Sea of Chinroth eastward, and in the direction of Beth Jeshimoth to the Sea of Arabah, the Dead Sea, southward to the foot of the slopes of Pisgah. And King Og of Bashan, one of the last of the Rephaim, who lived at Ashtaroth and at Edrei, and ruled over Mount Hermon and Salakah and all of Bashan, to the boundary of the Geshurites and the Maccathites, and over half of Gilead, to the boundary of King Sihon of Heshbon. Moses, servant of the Lord, and the Israelites defeated them, and Moses, servant of the Lord, gave their land for a possession to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh. Now, as a pastor, you're going to say, so where are those places and who are those people? Even modern scholars don't know all. Some of those places we know. Mount Pisgah, we know a few of them. Of course, we know the Dead Sea. Some of the other stuff is lost to history. It would have meant something to people reading this at the time, but not to us. Not all of them, anyway. Transjordanian victory. So mainly on the other side of the Jordan is that list from 12:1 to 6. Because a couple of the tribes settled on the other side of the Jordan. The kings conquered by Joshua. So those are the kings conquered by Moses. That was the title. King conquered by Joshua, once they entered into the land across the Jordan. The following are the kings of the land whom Joshua and the Israelites defeated on the west side of the Jordan, from Baal-Gad in the valley of Lebanon to Mount Halak that rises towards Seir. And Joshua gave their land to the tribes of Israel as possession according to their allotments, in the hill country, in the lowland, in the Arabah, in the slopes, in the wilderness and in the Negeb, in the land of the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, and Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites.
That next part you don't have to read, as far as I'm concerned.
King of Jericho, yeah. And then notice it says 1, at least in my Bible it says 1. I think that's just counting. So it says King of Jericho 1, like this. The king of A was next to Bethel 1. So it's counting. So at the end it says the king, there's 31 kings in all. The parts of Canaan still unconquered. Now Joshua's old and advanced in years. Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah.
Old and advanced in years.
Yeah.
And the Lord said to him, you are old and advanced in years, and very much of the land still remains to be possessed. This is the land that still remains, all the regions of the Philistines, and all those are the Geshurites from the Sihor, which is east of Egypt, northward to the boundary of Ekron. It is reckoned as Canaanite. There are 5 rulers of the Philistines, those of Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron, and those of the Ephraim in the south, and all the land of the Canaanites, and Mira that belongs to the Sidonites, and Aphek to the boundaries of the Amorites, and the land of the Gebalites, and all Lebanon toward the east, and Balgad from Mount Hermon, below Mount Hermon to Lebo Hamath, all the inhabitants of the hill country from Lebanon to Mishrapoth Naim, even all the Sidonians. I will myself drive them out from before the Israelites. Only allot the land to Israel for inheritance, as I have commanded you. Now therefore divide this land for inheritance to the 9 tribes and the half tribe of Manasseh. So 2.5 tribes, 2 tribes, and Manasseh, which covers both sides of the Jordan in the south, have already been allotted. So it's basically saying the rest of them are going to get this side, the west side of the Jordan. I'm going to say what I say every time when we talk about this. I always struggle with chosen people language for a couple reasons. And this is where it starts. This is literally the start of the chosen people language, right? First of all, it's us versus them. We're better than them. We belong. They don't belong.
Yeah.
But But beyond that, I struggle with that because isn't everyone God's creation, right? So why would God force God's people out so other God's people could live there? That's weird to me.
Yeah.
I know an Orthodox Jew would argue with me on that. But the other issue that I raise, and when we have this conversation, is people have been living there for generations, many generations,
Right.
and suddenly God says this land is yours to other people. I'm not saying that it's not the Holy Land of Israel and it's not important that it's theirs, but at the same time, why does it have to be this is your land and not their land? Kick them out, kill them.
Yeah, and annihilate them.
Right.
The scriptures there use some pretty strong words.
Right.
Just kill them all.
Right. So I'm not saying, I mean, the Bible's, it's not that I don't take some of this stuff literally or take it importantly, but it's, so we talk about history, sometimes our history isn't always good history.
Definitely.
And we look back on things and we go, oh, to me, there's that kind of, to me, some of this chosen people language is some of that history, like, oh, yeah, we have this holy land, but what do we do to earn it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What horrible things happened so that we could occupy it?
One of the things that has really bothered me on this place of study is the parallel with our world history today.
Yeah.
With what's going on between Russia and yeah, all of that.
Or Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
The same thing is going on.
Right.
We sometimes have a kind of, our country has a pro-Israel stance because we give them a lot of money, so we don't hear a lot about the others. We only hear about Palestine in terms of, well, they're terrorists, but actually that's sort of biased news getting filtered on our side.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's not perpetrators of violence on both sides, but the Israelis have a whole lot more money and resources than the Palestinians. It's rocks versus missiles for the most part. And so, yeah, that chosen people language is kind of what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. Russians feel like that's part of their country from when it was the Soviet Union.
Yeah, and what gives them that right? Yeah. It bothers me.
Nothing. But okay, we are gonna push through a few more sections here. It's lots of that I'm reading them, and there's lots of difficult word names. So
yes.
While the other half of Manasseh, the Reubenites and the Gadites received their inheritance, which Moses gave them beyond the Jordan eastward.
Where are you reading? I lost you.
Starting in verse 8 of chapter 13.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
As Moses, servant of the Lord, gave them from, because 2 tribes and Manasseh are on the east side of the Jordan. The other 9 tribes and half of Manasseh are on the west side.
Yeah.
From Eror, which is on the west of the Wadi Arnon, and the town that is in the middle of the valley, and all the tableland from Medeba as far as Dibon, and all the cities of King Sihon of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon, as far as the boundary of the Ammonites, and Gilead, and the region of the Geshurites, and the Maccathites, and all Mount Hermon, and all Bashan to Selikah, all the kingdom of Og and Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth and in Edrei. He alone was left of the survivors of the Rephaim. These Moses had defeated and driven out. Yet the Israelites did not drive out the Geshurites or the Maccathites, but Geshur and Meccath live within Israel to this day. The tribe of Levi alone Moses gave no inheritance. The offerings by fire to the Lord God of Israel are their inheritance, and as he said to them, the Levi is the temple. That's their kingdom.
Yeah.
I had this funny thought as I read through, and I thought, we talk about biblical names. Daniel is a biblical name, right? Judith is a biblical name, but there's some names in there, boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to start naming our kids, Zereth Sahar. That's a biblical name.
Yes.
I forget at some point. I'm gonna have to look it up now that I'm thinking about it. There's a named twins in the Bible, and they have the silliest name. I'm like, I want someone to name their twins. Those names. I don't know where they are, but I can probably look it up here. Named twins in Bible. I saw it and I was like, oh gosh. Oh, Esau and Jacob, but that's not who I'm thinking of. There's another one. Well, that's not helpful. All the twins in the Bible. Here we go. Because I just remember these names and thinking, gosh, that's silly. I want someone to name it. Jacob and Esau, Perez and Zerah, Ephraim and Manasseh, Ephraim and Manasseh, Castor and Pollux. Mentioned in that they're mentioned in Acts. Oh, I know there's another one. Anyway, there's the silliest names. It's like,
yeah. That's
anyway.
Okay. I'm not going to have any more twins.
No,
No.
you're not going to name your next kids. Yeah.
No.
So now we're going into the section which of the tribes gets which sections.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to read it all.
Good.
Because I will touch on a little bit. The territory of Reuben, it mentions that it's along, well, most of them are along the Jordan on one side or the other. Manasseh's in the north. Reuben and Gad are on the other side of the Jordan. Reuben is the furthest south on the other side of the Jordan, by the Salt Sea, the Dead Sea. Gad is on the other side, also north of that. And Manasseh is above both of them and goes all the way from the sea across the Jordan. It's a big one. I feel like I should have a map up on the screen. Hey, maybe I can do that. Anyway, that would be easier, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
If we're looking at where territories are.
It'd be easier for me. I don't know if it's easier for you.
Here we go. Here we go. Oh, that's perfect. It's not very big. That'll work. Okay. So let me do that. Here we go. So Moses gave them, because Moses died before he entered in the promised land across the Jordan. Moses gave them the Gad, Reuben, and this part of Manasseh, which is also over here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Anyway, so you see Jerusalem's down here.
Yeah.
And Jesus is from up here near the Sea of Galilee. So there's actually quite a bit of distance between the two.
Where's Jericho?
Jericho's right here, right near Jerusalem.
Okay. Okay.
So it talks about the rest of chapter 13 talks about the territory of Gad, where it is, which is right here, and the territory of the half tribe of Manasseh on the east, which is all of this. It mentions these different location names. And then the distribution of the territory west of the Jordan. These are the oops, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. I wonder if there's so 20 miles. So probably from Jerusalem to the Sea of Galilee is 150 miles or so, which walking would be several days.
Yes.
These are the inheritance of the Israelites received. I'm reading the beginning of chapter 14. Received in the land of Canaan, which the priest Eleazar and Joshua son of Nun, as the heads of the families of tribes of the Israelites, distributed to them. Their inheritance was by lot. That means it was random.
Yeah.
As the Lord commanded Moses for the 9.5 tribes. For Moses given inheritance to the 2.5 tribes beyond the Jordan. But to the Levites he gave no inheritance among them, for the people of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, and no portion was given to Levites in the land, but only towns to live in with their pasture lands for the flocks and herds. The Israelites did as the Lord commanded Moses, they allotted the land. So I'm learning, so even Ephraim is part of this tribe. So one tribe got all of Manasseh and Ephraim. That's one tribe.
Wow.
That was kind of, why are there 12 when I know one of them didn't get land? But this is all one tribe.
Yeah.
Then the people of Judah is this down here, came to Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Zephunah, the Kenizzite, said to him, you know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, in Kadesh Barnea, concerning you and me. I was 40 years old, and Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought him an honest report. But my companions who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. Yet I wholeheartedly followed the Lord my God. And Moses swore on that day, saying, surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you and your children forever, because you have wholeheartedly followed the Lord my God. And now, as you see, the Lord has kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years since the time the Lord spoke this word to Moses, while Israel was journeying through the wilderness. And here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong today as I was on the day that Moses sent me. My strength now is as my strength was then, for war and for going and coming. So now give me this hill country of which the Lord spoke on that day, for you heard on that day how the Anakim were there, and with great fortified cities. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall drive them out, as the Lord said. Then Joshua blessed him and gave Hebron to Caleb, son of Zephunah, for an inheritance. So part of the reason I think that's important is, remember what it just said, that there's so much politics going on here. They just said it would be by lot, meaning people would draw straws for what they get.
Right.
But yet he has come and said, no, hold on. God promised me I'd get the land that I stepped in, which is the land of Judah down here, that I crossed over into. So I should get that land before you draw lots. for
Oh,
for my tribe, and because God said so. So he's given this land, the land of Judah, which is essentially where Jerusalem is. It's in Benjamin, but it's in Jesus' time. It's in Judah. This whole part down here. So it's the good land. He wanted the good land.
yeah,
So before you draw straws, let me just take the good land first.
yeah. Sounds normal for people.
It's politics. I mean, it's all politics, right? Then it describes the beginning of chapter 15, the boundary of Judah, and Caleb occupies that area and moves his tribe there. And then there's this little story in chapter 15, starting with verse 16. And Caleb said, whoever attacks Kiriath Sefer and takes it, to him I will give my daughter Aksa as wife. Othniel, son of Kenaz, the brother of Caleb, took it, and when he gave him his daughter Aksa as wife, when she came to him, she urged him to ask her father for a field. As she dismounted from her donkey, Caleb said to her, what do you wish? She said to him, give me a present. Since you have set me in the land of the Negeb, give me springs of water as well. So Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. So he needed help defeating some of his enemies, so he gave his daughter as a prize to the general that would win for him. And in exchange, she negotiated to get some land too. It's all politics, I'm telling you. It's all politics.
Some things haven't changed.
Right. But she also got a part of land that had springs. So water in the ground, which is nice.
Yeah.
Then it lists literally all the towns in Judah, which we're not going to do. And we are to chapter 16. See how quick this is going when we don't read everything?
Yes. You're doing good. And I'm glad you're reading it, not me.
Literally all of the rest of that from verse 20 to verse 63 is all, well, I should read the last line there, is all names of towns. But the people of Judah could not drive out the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem. The Jebusites live with the people of Judah in Jerusalem to this day. So there are a few that manage to stay. We've heard that in previous chapters. There's a few small groups of people that manage to survive and hold on.
Yeah.
The other thing about that, which bugs me also a little bit, is we know now, we didn't know so much even 100 years ago, 200 years ago, but Jerusalem is a major crossroads in that world, especially at the time of Jesus, but even probably some before. So there's multiple cultures. Anything that comes from the north or the south, they can go over the Mediterranean Sea, but it's slower and more expensive. So Jerusalem is a crossroads. From anything coming from the east, from southeast, from Asia, comes through Jerusalem. Anything coming from Africa comes through Jerusalem. Anything coming from Europe comes down through Jerusalem. So trade goes through Jerusalem, which means culture and language and everything go through Jerusalem. So when it says, when that last line there said, well, these people couldn't be driven out, so they live with the people of Judah and Jerusalem this day. Jerusalem has always been a multicultural city.
Yeah.
When it sounds like it was just Jewish, but then they let some other people stay there, that's probably not the case. It existed actually before the Israelites came, and it's always been multicultural. Despite what the Israelis might like, at the time of Jesus, it was a crossroads for the whole world. It was one of a very important kind of crossroads. So we go in the territories of the different tribes. So the next one is Ephraim, which is right here we mentioned is part of the tribe of Manasseh. Manasseh and Ephraim is one tribe, so they get a lot of land. And it just says basically where that is. The other half tribe of Manasseh, the west side, which it talks about this, that's the first part of chapter 17. And it lists all the cities in there. If there's some of these have stories in them. Like the end of this, the Manassites could not take possession of certain towns, so the Kenites continue to live in the land. But when the Israelites grew strong, they put the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not utterly drive them out. So the Canaanites are still in some of this area at the time of this written. Here's an important part. We haven't come to any of the other, we haven't not yet drawn straws, right? We said we were going to draw straws, yet everything that says Manasseh and Ephraim and Gad and Reuben and Judah is already decided. So 4 of the tribes have already laid claim, and no one else has gotten their land yet. So starting with verse 14 of chapter 17. The tribe of Joseph spoke to Joshua, saying, why have you given me but one lot and one portion of inheritance, since we are a numerous people whom all along the Lord has blessed? And Joshua said to him, if you are numerous people, go up to the forest and clear ground there for yourselves in the land of the Perizzites and the Rephaim, since the hill country of Ephraim is too narrow for you. The tribe of Joseph said, the hill country is not enough for us, yet all the Canaanites who live in the plain have chariots of iron, both those in Bethshean and its villages and those in the valley of Jezreel. Then Joshua said to the house of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, you are indeed a numerous people, and have great power. You shall not have one lot only, but the hill country shall be yours. For though it is a forest, you shall clear it and possess it to its farthest borders. For you shall drive out the Canaanites, though they have chariots of iron, and though they are strong. So that's sort of the discussion of why they get this part, the Ephraim here. So they're the biggest tribe, so they get the biggest piece of land. It's a huge, if you think about, here's Zebulun, it's a little tiny bit.
Yeah.
And here's the tribe of Joseph, which is all of this, including Ephraim, this big area over here. And that's the tribe of the areas of the remaining tribes. So they finally cast lots. After they've given out several of the sections, they finally cast lots. There remained among the Israelites 7 tribes whose inheritance had not yet been apportioned. So Joshua said to the Israelites, this is starting verse 2, now 3. How long will you be slack about going in and taking possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you? Provide 3 men from each tribe, and I will send them out that they may begin to go throughout the land, writing a description of it with a view to their inheritances. Then come back to me. They shall divide into 7 portions. Judah continue in its territory in the south, and the house of Joseph in the territory in the north. You shall describe the land in 7 divisions and bring the descriptions here to me, and I will cast lots for you here before the Lord our God. The Levites have no portion among you, for the priesthood of the Lord is their heritage, and Gad and Reuben and the half-tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance beyond the Jordan eastward, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave them. So the men started on their way, and Joshua charged those who went to write the description of the land, saying, go throughout the land and write a description of it, and come back to me, and I will cast lots for you here before the Lord in Shiloh. So the men went and traversed the land and set down in the book a description of it by towns and 7 divisions. And they came back to Joshua in the camp at Shiloh, and Joshua cast lots for them in Shiloh before the Lord. And there Joshua apportioned the land of the Israelites, each a portion. So basically they went and they surveyed. They looked at the other piece of land that aren't, these mainly to the north, these 4 here. And then you also have Dan and Benjamin and Simeon. So they looked in those areas and they sort of said, okay, this is what's here. These are the towns that are already there. This is what it looks like. They surveyed. And then they came back and said, here's what we think are the different, where the different lands should be. And then it describes the different territories. The territory of Benjamin is one of the more interesting ones. It fell between Judah, which is already established, and Manasseh to the north. It's a small one, but it also has Jerusalem in it. At least at that time it did. I'm not going to read that whole thing. The territory of Simeon is way down here. And it actually says here that it is the inheritance of the tribe of Simeon formed part of the territory of Judah because a portion of the tribe of Judah was too large for them. The tribe of Simeon obtained an inheritance within their inheritance. So Judah had no border on the south, so they just kept expanding south. And Simeon said, hey, you got too much land. Let's give up some of it. So Simeon's surrounded here by Judah. And Judah, they don't really have a southern border, so you can sort of see that they just sort of kept expanding south. And in the north, we have Zebulon, which is right here. There's a little section there in chapter 19, talks about where Zebulon is. Oop. Issachar right here, mentioned. Asher right here along the coast. Tyre, we hear a lot about Tyre and Sidon. They're both in Asher. And then Naphtali here, territory of Naphtali, and the last one is territory of Dan. That's my territory. I'm kidding.
Very good.
Right, right here, for the territory of Dan. So, and in each case, it sort of describes what towns are in each place. I'm just going to read one more little thing here. So the last bit here, when they had finished distributing, starting in verse 49 of chapter 19. When they had finished distributing the several territories of the land as inheritances, the Israelites gave an inheritance among them to Joshua, son of Nun. By command of the Lord, they gave him the town that he asked for, Timnath-Serah, in the hill country of Ephraim. So Timnath, it's actually there. So it's somewhere in here, in the hill country of Ephraim. He rebuilt the town and settled in it. These are the inheritances of the priest Eleazar and Joshua, son of Nun, and the heads of the families of the tribes of the Israelites, distributed by lot at Shiloh before the Lord, at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So they finished dividing the land.
Phew.
There we are. There's a little bit more list stuff in the next couple chapters, but it's not quite as bad as what we just read. And there's a couple stories too. So in some ways, Joshua is a lot like some of the parts of the Torah that, you know, list names and list places. It's doing that. Well, let me ask you, why do you think it's doing that? I think there's a logical reason.
It's their history.
It's almost like a legal document.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's nowhere to file, you know, this is our land and this is their land.
Right.
Right. So they're using their religious documents to be like legal documents.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we live, this is where you live. And if we ever have a question, we can look back in our
Right.
scriptures and see
Right.
you are breaking the border.
The thing that amazes me is how long ago we're talking, and they're doing these legal documents, and they're writing them, and they're this is the law.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, that's why scripture is, it's hard to define what, you know, the Bible is not a genre, it's multiple genres. And it's not historic. I mean, it has historical things in it.
Yeah.
But just the idea of the gospel is an entirely different. No one has ever said the gospel is historical. It's its own genre, but it's different. It's not that those things didn't happen. It's just different. Yeah. So much of the Bible is legalistic, I think. Mm-hmm. Even a lot of the letters of Paul are essentially legalistic.
Sure.
But what I mean is, people are asking him how they're supposed to live, and he's saying, follow these rules, mm-hmm. which is by definition legalistic, right? Yeah. It's list of rules, it's list of it's their legal system. Instead of having, you know, when you have a court or a judge look at precedent, which is what almost every big case they do. The Supreme Court looks at precedent. They look at past cases, and see how it's affected now. They don't have there's no precedent. So this is their precedent. So if down the road there's a problem with one of the many laws that are in Deuteronomy or with the territory, this is where they look. Yeah. So the Bible serves as, you know, legal document and history and poetry and prophecy and so on and so on, right? It's so many different genres.
It's a library in itself.
It is a library. And even each book, like Joshua it's in the history section, mm-hmm. but there's parts in there that are narrative stories that are interesting. There's
Yeah.
parts in there that are history, which is separate from the narrative stories, and there are parts in there that are legalistic, like what we just read.
Yeah.
So even within the history section, you have a variety of genres.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, the Torah, the Torah is many, many genres too. You have all sorts of stuff in the Torah. You have legalistic stuff. You've got
Yeah.
stories of Noah and Abraham and Adam and Eve and everything else, which are right. So, and you've got what I would say, I wouldn't call those things, this is where I sound like a heretic to some people. I wouldn't call those things strictly historical necessarily, but then there are things that I would think lean more toward being more historical in there too. Some of the wandering, some of the things that happened in Exodus with Moses lean a little bit more historical. So it's such a hodgepodge. Even individual books can vary between genre. But this is all, actually, I warned you all last week. Maybe that's why nobody else is here this week.
Well, that could be.
I said the next week is going to be a lot of legalistic names of places and people. So, but we skipped a lot of it. We just covered like 7 chapters. Wait, 8 chapters. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 8 chapters. Good for us.
And are you giving a test on it? I hope not, because I wouldn't pass it.
I'm going to give you a list of 20 names of towns, and you have to pick the one that I just made up.
Okay. Yeah. As I said, I wouldn't pass it.
Because they all sound made up. So actually, there's only a little bit left of Joshua, and I part of the reason I wanted to do the history books is I think there's some of the stories that get neglected a little bit in our lectionary, or just we only hear them once every 3 years or whatever, start to come in these history books. Samson, the 2 stories about Samson are in Judges, which is the next book. We never hear from Samson. So even though we know the stories of Samson and Delilah with his hair being cut off, and we know the story about Samson pulling down the building on top of him and killing everybody, that's never in the lectionary. So there's some neat stories from the history section of the Bible still to come. We just have to get through what the second half of Joshua does is sets up who's where. If you some plays and musicals have sort of they don't all do this, but they sort of have a subtle, somewhere in the first few scenes of the show, you get introduced without realizing you're being introduced. Like the characters are having conversations, but there's intentional conversation about where do they live, how are they related to who's their kids, who's their spouses, but they do it in such a way you don't always know that you're getting that information. So that later on in the play or the musical, you don't have to deduce that stuff. You already know the relationships. We're getting that. If all of the history books are one section of the library, we're getting the setting, right? Where is everybody? Who does everybody belong to? Where they are? I mean, that's it's good that it's at the beginning, in a way, right? Because this is the first book of the history section. So, well, thank you.
Thank you too.
We will finish Joshua next week.
Okay.
And then I'm going to be gone a lot of August, but we'll figure out what we're going to do then. I'll be gone essentially 3 weeks in August. So
3 weeks.
2 weeks of vacation and 1 week at camp.
Okay.
So yeah.
Camp up
all right.
Denver?
What's that?
Camp up in Denver area?
Not in Denver. It's in southern Colorado. It's the Rainbow Trail.
The Rainbow Trail. That's the one I'm thinking. Okay.
Oh, let me end the recording.